Welcome to the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your employees all the information they need to be successful at their jobs. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, host of the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your staff everything they need to be successful at their job and growth. I always mention Chris and Mark past episodes, okay? The people can watch. There's so many good past episodes. David Allen of Getting Things Done, if anyone out there has heard of his book. Michael Gerber of the E-Myth, and there's so many more. Check out past episodes. They're fantastic. And before I introduce today's guest, this episode is brought to you by SweetProcess. Okay. If you've had team members ask you the same questions over and over, and maybe you spent times explaining it, there is a better way. There is a solution. SweetProcess is actually a software that makes it drop dead easy to train and onboard new staff and save time with existing staff. And I was talking to one of the owners, Owen. Not only do universities, banks, hospitals, and software companies use them, but first responder government agencies use them in life or death situations. So I was like, it's good enough for them. It's good enough for me. And you can use SweetProcess to document all the repetitive tasks that eat up your precious time and your team's time, so you can focus on growing and empowering them. You could sign up for a free 14-day trial. No credit cards required. Go to sweetprocess.com. That's sweet like candy, SWEET process.com. I am excited about today's guests. We have Chris Dunning, the CEO of TechQuarters, an IT services business, and Mark Odell. He's the operations director at TechQuarters. And over the last 20 years, Chris and Mark have been working together for I don't want to date them, but decades, let's say over a decade. Chris has helped to manage, grow, and turn around enterprises. Not only did he create TechQuarters.com, but also the training business, 365cloudacademy.com. Mark, fun fact, is done Ironman and has even won one. The fact that someone finished one, Mark, is remarkable. So thank you both for joining me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So I want to start off with, Chris, if you could talk about TechQuarters a little bit more and what you do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've been doing this probably for about the last 11 or so years now. And it really, if you encapsulate the words, it's probably digital transformation, but we really focus around small to medium-sized enterprises, really, or SMB, if you want, and we help them migrate to the Microsoft cloud stack. And once we've got them there, they then need a little bit of IT support. And that's probably the biggest play here at TechQuarters. We have our own help desk. We provide, different types of IT support services. And then part of digital transformation is just to ensure that everybody can use the system. So, our 365 Cloud Academy really covers that. We have thousands of videos on how to use the stuff, So it's that full 3-pillar thing all the way through to transformation of a small to medium-sized business.
So talk about some of the types of customers you serve and the pain points they have.
Yeah, well, the biggest pain points, I would say, is being able to work from, whenever we talk to these clients, it's about being able to work from anywhere on any device, and and minimizing the downtime. That is the key. So if you're talking about the small to medium-sized businesses, obviously working from home has been a huge thing over the last year. And so, people have needed to be able to just pick up the laptop, log on to 365 wherever they are, internet line, work from there, have good telecommunication skills, chat, teleconferencing, and just collaboration. And so, the different types of businesses would be, actually, it's across all sectors, but we really do serve the finance sector. That's about 30% of our customer base. But really all sectors, from recruitment, property, professional services, and businesses that have, say, 5 to 500 employees.
Yeah. So it's a range. Is there a sweet spot for you? Like if a company has a certain number of staff?
Yeah, definitely. The sweet spot for us, probably because it's dictated by the IT support outsourcing, is probably 10 to 100 employees. It's essentially where the sweet spot would be where they haven't really got a CTO in place. So the board wants to outsource the whole of their IT managed services to us.
Which makes sense. You want people who are experts, and you may not want to hire on in-house talent because that could be more expensive, and then you have to train them. So I want to talk to you, Mark, about, so how did you discover SweetProcess?
That's the simple one I'd answer, really, which is Google. How does anyone discover anything these days?
What were you looking for when you were?
Checklisting software actually was probably the terms that I did, and I did. Although the answer was pretty quick, it did take a while, and there was quite a lot of sampling of different things that were out there until we set upon SweetProcess.
What stuck out about SweetProcess? Usually, the director of operations, Mark, are very detail oriented, so I could see you sampling a lot of things. So I'm really curious of what your answer was of what stuck out.
Yeah, it allowed us to bring different types of media and different bits and pieces into the system. So it wasn't just a simple checklist thing. It allowed us to nest inside this task needs to be done, and now you click a little down button, and then here's how it does it in a procedural way, which could then include further questioning or further information. Yeah, because
you like to keep it neat and tidy. Is that why?
Yeah, and part of the history of this is that we had these different ways of doing things in different spreadsheets or different Word documents or OneNotes all over the place. And quite often we would have a task list that was a checklist, and that checklist referred to do ABC. Then someone has to click into another system to see ABC. And unfortunately, what happens quite often is they don't click into the other system to do ABC. They go, oh, I know how to do ABC, so I'll just do it how I've always done it, and tick the thing off on the list. So immediately just having it built within the checklist to click it down, you can see what they're supposed to do.
So yeah, talk a little about what did life look like before and then after? What were some of the things that you found, okay, we really need to get a handle on this. This is really important, because a lot of times you have really good people at your company, so it's in their head. So you depend, okay, cool, they know how to do it, but that's not always, if you need to train someone else, there's, a system.
Yeah, scalability is something that we've had to deal with, and I suppose all small companies as they grow do. We've grown every year on year, in terms of revenue and staff, and doing so brings challenges from being a few people sat next to each other with a few customers that you all know, and you just go, oh, we just know the answer to that. And you go through this real growing pain of, yeah, but this new person hasn't worked with that customer before, so how do we get it inside their head? And the answer is, you don't get it inside their head. You get it inside a system that doesn't have to be inside their head, so that when that new person becomes another 10 new people, well, they just follow the same process. So we've been through some of that pain, and it comes and goes in waves still. And what it looks like really firsthand is explaining to a customer why X, Y, Z that looks like a really simple thing hasn't been done. And that's okay once, but when you're explaining it to them twice or three times that this little thing of a process that has been missed, and they're like, well, why? It's so trivial. And it's this people working on instinct as opposed to working to here's the process.
So life before looked like, you said spreadsheets. What else were you using?
Spreadsheets, Word documents, and in some cases even printouts of those things, which was another advantage is we've got people that go to site, well, less these days, but people that go to site, and they were printing out things to sign off with customers. So they would, let's say, do a build of a desktop in our scenario, install a desktop for a user, and they would print out a Word document and physically tick off those pieces of paper and give it to the customer along with the desktop and say, here. Whereas what we've been able to do now is they can tick it off on their phone through SweetProcess, and then export that whole thing out as a PDF off to the customer, who gets a digital copy of it instead.
Yeah, I want to hear about more features that you use. But I can imagine with what you do over at your company, there's a lot of steps. I probably would avoid getting a software in the beginning because I'm just like thinking, this is going to be so much work to put in. What was your mindset around, all the steps, putting in all the steps?
Yeah, I think actually that was a lot of the mindset or a lot of the pushback, I guess, that I had internally was, well, but we've already got this Word document and we can use it. Why are we having to recreate it into here? There's work involved in that. And I would say that almost whatever the system is, systemizing it in the long run is well worth it. But there is an uphill bump, and you've got to take some pain to get to a point where you've got that information there and it's reusable. And so in terms of when you're picking, well, what do I do this to? It's those things that are frequent but not necessarily the same. If you're doing a job 20 times a day, you probably don't need it. It's the things that happen often, but they don't happen continually, because they're the things that people think they know how to do, or that change between the last time they did them and this time that they did them.
How do you get, Mark, staff buy-in to this? Do you have them start to document the procedures? What do you do to get them actually in the system and using it? Because I imagine you're like, oh, we found this amazing, like once you've tested we have this amazing solution, but now the team has to adopt it.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is prescription, that there are certain bits that okay, this is just how it has to be done. So in our case, we use a ticketing system called Freshdesk. So a support ticket, an incident will come in, and of certain types that will fire off a requirement in that system to go into SweetProcess and run through that process, and it can't be closed until you've done that. So there's an element of automation to how that bit works. But for the wider group of people, and this isn't just applied to the techies in the team, so there's some admin tasks. Say when a customer gets taken on, there's a whole checklist, and we're growing, we're taking on lots of customers, and there's a whole checklist of things that has to happen when that customer gets taken on. And it's one of those that the first few times people sort of think they don't need it, and then suddenly we're taking on a bundle of customers in one go. The people that are doing it absolutely understand that they can't even keep track of doing those customers if they're not checking them off on a list. So it becomes that self-fulfilling. And then if you take it away from them, they'd be like, oh, well, no, I definitely need that. And so what you now see between the teams, and the new customer take on is a good example, because when a customer signs up, there's something for finance to do. They've got to set up the bank. They've got to set up the invoicing template. Then we're maybe doing a project for them. So the project manager has to book the project in, and they have to update things. And then the contracts need to be saved somewhere. So that they all have to happen separately. And what you find is that something will go wrong, and we look back then, and one of the teams will say, could we add this to the SweetProcess? Because if this had been done, I wouldn't have had this problem further down the line. And each individual team will look at it and go, oh yeah, great. And then next time round, problem solved, because we do this extra step in the process.
I love that. So you can go back to that SweetProcess and add it. Like, well, now it's not anyone's being blamed, or you just go back to the process and go, what was not there, and add it back in. What other scenarios do you use it for? So you mentioned onboarding a new client. What other scenarios is it helpful for?
Yeah, so onboarding clients, we have a lot of what we would call run books for customers. And that will be things like a customer needs a new machine, a customer's got a new user, somebody's leaving the company, our own internal new starters and leavers. Again, they're really quite important, because you want the experience when a new person starts, you want it to be seamless, you want everything to be there. And when someone's leaving a business, you want to make sure that they haven't been left with some access to something that they shouldn't have, or they've got a piece of equipment in their house that gets forgotten about. We do those account setups. Mostly that stuff. Training, we've got a couple there for training take on. So like moving into the first line support team, there's a bundle there that are in order to be able to take support tickets for X, you need to have been through this process as well.
Yeah, no, I love hearing the different scenarios people use it for, because you could probably pretty much use it for any scenario, whether it's internal or external. You're working with a customer. What were some of the other features maybe? And I know you first looked, Mark, about, okay, I want something as a checklist. And then you're like, okay, I want something as a checklist that opens up into these other checklist, what were some other features that you started to play around with it that you discovered were really important to you?
Grouping in terms of having a root document basically and a versioning. So that didn't feel like it was that terribly important until you had it, but it's these iterations of this thing's happening again. We start an instance. They don't actually use the word instance, but you start an instance of this process, and it's this version, and we can track back and go, well, version 1.2 was used. And so that scenario I mentioned there where we find something was wrong and needs to be changed, it's okay, well, that was done in version 1.2, so it was never done. So we can also go back and say, well, do we need to go back to everyone that had version 1.2 and fill in the gap that we just found, or are we okay to leave it? But at the very least, we know version 1.3, and you can see what's changed through those versions. So that's very useful.
Yeah, I like that. What have you found to be a big game changer once you and the team started using SweetProcess? Was there a certain like scenario where there was, this happened quicker, or we didn't miss any, our feedback from the customer was amazing, or
I mean, I think that's it really. It's just the feedback. Previously it really wasn't uncommon to have to be having this conversation about, well, why was this thing missed? Why was that thing missed? Or instance getting reopened, or the new customer take on getting a month down the line and discovering that we haven't preloaded invoice details. So now finance are coming in and going, oh, well, you've asked us to invoice this customer. We haven't got the details yet, which was all just time wasting. They still got invoice, but now it's all done ahead of time and it's just there. The invoice goes.
Yeah. It's basically helps streamline it. So, so everything's there, and then the finance team, or it's more of an internal facing thing where it's like, oh, where is this? And it just doesn't have to be as much communication between the team, like more productivity.
Yeah. And I think it's not so much that there's this, wow, big, huge thing that you can put on the poster. It's that there's all these sort of iterative stuff throughout the business that everything just gets more efficient and runs and supports growth. And that's been the big thing for us, is that you can't grow a business whilst you're relying on Bob remembering to do these things. It doesn't work.
Whenever I talk about this stuff with people, I feel like a sense of ease, like people can sleep, or I can sleep at night, that this has been documented, because it's just a system now and we don't have to depend on there's not as much human error, I guess you could say.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
How has it changed? Go ahead.
Just going to contribute there. One of the things that's important to me is that, we're taking on between 10 and 30 net new customers every month. If you take on that amount of customers, there's a lot of detail that needs to be ticked off, and to accommodate that, we have to be recruiting people in advance and training them. And so if they were coming in, there weren't strict processes and they'd trip over the shoelaces, our customers would be complaining, you haven't done this, you've left an icon off my desktop, here's a VIP. It's small things like that, contract cancelling situations, so you've got to have a system like this, like Mark's saying.
Have you felt
recruitment? Sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just saying recruitment is another example, another use case. So in the recruitment process, we're using this because once we shortlist, we want to put all the candidates through the same shortlist process. So that's fine. We've got the template emails in there. So we send out an email that is, well, here's what we need next. Here's the details for a contract. Here's where you're welcome to a video interview, and make sure you're ready for ABC. And we just, they're by the numbers, don't have to think about it.
So much better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about how it's changed each of your typical day? And it could be, what you do, or just could be your mindset around the company. How has it changed, Mark, your typical day?
I think you said something there. I can't quite remember what you said, but it was around the sleeping better, but it's around the reduction of chaos, that things at the start of a business can be quite frantic, and exciting, but quite frantic. And what a system like this does is starts to remove away some of that franticness and just go, okay, yeah, but this is how we do it, and this is, and it doesn't mean you have to sort of hold up the placard and go, no, we're not doing it because this is how we do it. It just means that we all know this is how we do it, and if sometimes we have to change that and adapt, that's also fine. But we're not reinventing it the whole time. We're not trying to remember things the whole time. And if you get busy, that's when it counts more, because you've got this memory that just works for you. You know, it's putting technology there. So you know, you take on lots of customers, you just process them through. Someone else can help you because you're like, can you do those 4 things? Yeah.
Chris, that's a lot of customers to taking on a monthly basis. So what about you? How has it changed your typical day, whether it's, you know, with the team or different team members or yourself?
For me, it is definitely I sleep better at night. I'm not really as engaged with SweetProcess on a daily basis, but the teams are. So what's important is if we're taking on that amount of customers, that there's no tripping over your shoelaces, because the magnitude of the problem, where it's a small problem in the eyes of the VIP, is enormous. And if you don't get it right at the start of your relationship, you very quickly lose customers. So, you know, for us, it's about controlling our growth, and just making sure that, you know, we're not a victim of our own success. So it's belt and braces, I would say, and helps me sleep.
Yeah, and I could say, you know, probably as an executive, there's a lot of transparency because you could go in any instance and probably see what people are working on, and even though you're not in the data, you can check it out, right?
Oh, the dashboards, yeah, they you know, absolutely. It's just, you know, it's minutes as opposed to hours of messing around with IT, you know, and where's the paperwork and what's the version, and trying to dissect if that has been a problem, where's it gone wrong? That's what we used to do. But, you know, now it's, step 6. Did we do that? Yes. Perfect.
Love it. Last question for both of you. Thank you so much. What's the very next step someone listening should do that should take to streamline operations? Mark, what do you recommend if people are like, they're listening to this? Yes, I know I need to streamline operations. What's the next step? What's your best advice now that you've started working with SweetProcess and you've started, you know, digging even deeper into streamlining everything?
Yeah, I think really key is not to look at it like, oh, there's no point doing this because it won't be perfect from day one. There's often a lot of people get completely frozen by, oh, I've got to document it, and that's going to take forever, and we're going to have to do this, that, and the other. And so what I would suggest is pick something that's maybe not too big to start with, but definitely pick something and say, look, I'm going to document it in as best I can quickly, and then we're going to build on it, because even that is better. And what they'll find quite quickly is, particularly with SweetProcess, because you can put video clips in there of, if you don't want to write how you do it, that's fine. Just screen record yourself, embed it in there, or do a couple of screenshots. It won't be perfect, but as long as you can follow it next time, and then the next time, even if you're doing it yourself, the next time you run through it, just go, oh, okay, that doesn't make sense. I'll just correct it. Then get a colleague to do it, and then they can query it. And it builds very quickly because it's super easy to edit and update. And don't let that perfection or that idea of I've got to document stop you from doing something.
Yeah, the perfection will halt people in their tracks, and
absolutely,
just get it started, get it documented, even if it's a short outline, because you could just build on it the next time you're going to do it, and you'll continue to perfect it, and then probably hand it to someone else, and they'll find holes in it, and they'll keep perfecting it as well. That's fantastic. I want to Chris, leave any final words about streamlining and the company, but I want to point people to go to TechQuarters. They can check out more about what you and the company do. What else? Final words, Chris, should we talk about TechQuarters and or streamlining?
Well, for us, we want to double our business in the next 2-3 years. And there's no way on earth that we were ever going to be able to do that without having a system like this to control that growth. I suppose the final word is, if you are seeing it as a hurdle, the simplest thing for me whenever I've implemented systems like this, and they are quite simple systems, but I would get a product champion internally, somebody who can own it, and they will be a good PR person for it internally, and actually they'll enjoy being that person as well, rolling it out, and it's a nice bit of promotion for them internally, so that might help.
I love that. Yeah, totally. And then it doesn't have to fall on your shoulders necessarily as a CEO, and you may not even like doing, and someone actually enjoys doing that stuff, putting it in place. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mark, for chatting, and everyone check out techquarters.com. Check out more episodes of the Process Breakdown and SweetProcess as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Process Breakdown podcast. Before you go, quick question. Do you want a tool that makes it easy to document processes, procedures, and/or policies for your company so that your employees have all the information they need to be successful at their job? If yes, sign up for a free 14-day trial of SweetProcess. No credit card is required to sign up. Go to sweetprocess.com, sweet like candy, and process like process.com. Go now to sweetprocess.com and sign up for your risk-free 14-day trial.
Hi, this is Owen, the CEO and co-founder here at SweetProcess. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast interview, actually, you know what I want you to do? Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. That way we get more people aware of the good stuff that you get here on this podcast. Again, go on to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Looking forward to reading your review. Have a good day.